Hello everybody and welcome to part 2 of a two-part lesson series on how to approach, plan and write up a response to the literature extract question for CIE. So what did we do in part 1? Now if you haven't already seen part 1, then I do recommend that you go and have a quick look just so that you understand exactly what to do with that extract and how to get yourself to a point of where you're ready to write up an answer. So what did we do? We looked at how to interpret, deconstruct the question. We looked at how to understand the extract's significance regardless of the question, and how to analyse in time conditions, how to make your analysis effective, and how to make sure that you're making good choices. We annotated the extract for a range of techniques. We decided on our final quotations, and we brainstormed ideas in order to formulate a plan. And then we did make a concrete plan. And this is the plan. So we had 3 different points, and then on the extract itself, we then numbered the quotations that we wanted to use, and it looked like this. So for the purpose of today's lesson, I'm just going to focus on point 1 with you, and I'm going to show you a model for point 1, but you can just have a quick look again at all the different selections that I've got for section 1, section 2, and section 3. So everything is now fully evidenced on the extract. It's very, very clear which quotations I'm going to use. Obviously, you want to aim to have these types of notes for all of your different quotations. But like I said, for the purpose of today, I'm just going to go through one of the sections just to make it quite clear and quick. So just a recap of your essay structure. So I'm going to go through with you how to write an introduction. Now you want to try and keep your introduction fairly concise, straight to the point, but very, very clear. And you can aim to do that in roughly about 3 sentences. And then the main body of your essay, you've got your point 1 or your section 1, point 2 and point 3. If you've got time, you can have a mini conclusion. So what have you proven with regards to the question, or what have you learned from the extract? Overall, why is it so important to the novel itself? And what do you think that Du Maurier is trying to show the reader in this particular extract? And each point should be structured like this. So you want to make sure that it's quite detailed. So there should be a depth to each of your sections or your points. And you want to be trying to use multiple pieces of evidence. In my example from my planning, I've got 3. You want to be aiming for 2 to 3. So you definitely want to have more than just one quotation because you want to show that you can analyse in quite a lot of depth. So here is my introduction. As you can see, it isn't that long, but it is quite clear. It does everything that it needs to. So the introduction is, in this extract, Du Maurier presents the internal conflict of both characters, and through the truth that is revealed by Maxim, Du Maurier also examines the extent to which Rebecca can be viewed as the villain of the novel. Furthermore, as Du Maurier powerfully highlights the impact that Rebecca, both alive and dead, has had on both Maxim and the narrator, her significance as a wife, woman, and mysterious presence is revealed. And you can see that I've kind of organised my introduction into 3 different sections. Why is this extract significant, or why is it key? Why is it important? And then an overview of the ideas that I'm going to cover in my essay. And if you did join me for part 1, you should be able to recognise a lot of these key words that I've highlighted in green from my initial brainstorm. So I did a huge brainstorm of what I knew about the extract, what I knew about the novel, things that popped out with regards to the extract and its significance. And I did say at that point that all of those notes, all of those keywords that you're writing down would be hugely helpful when you got to writing up the actual essay. So all I've done is I've just lifted some of the best ideas that I had and put it straight into my introduction, because that's also going to give the examiner an overview of the main points of my essay. And then at the end, I've just ended with what Du Maurier is doing and why she's doing it. And I just want to draw your attention to this down the right hand side. Do think as well about your academic language. So this is your AO4, your personal response and developing a sophisticated personal response. So you can see that I've just used adverbs and verbs just together to create some academic phrases with regards to Du Maurier, what she's doing. So try and utilise some of that language, not only in your introduction, but all the way through your essay. Okay, so like I said, we're going to look at an example answer, and it's going to be for point 1. So the point that I started with was Du Maurier skillfully increases the tension as the truth about Rebecca is revealed. And this is my first section. As you can see, very, very colourful, but hopefully the colours will help you. Down the right hand side, I've given you a checklist of all the different things that I've included. And the checklist is made up of a range of different skills and techniques that come from the assessment objectives, but also the mark scheme. So I'm trying to hit everything that I can with regards to just getting as many marks as possible. And you can see that a lot of this is in the mark scheme. Obviously the wording may be slightly different, but this all does apply to the assessment objectives and that mark scheme. So I want to make sure that I've got relevant points that show that I understand the extract, but I also understand what the question is asking me, and I want to reference that throughout. Consistent focus on the actual question. Evidence, very, very important for your AO1. You've got to have your quotations in there, but also they've got to be introduced and embedded. And if you don't know what I mean when I say introduced and embedded, then do have a look at my micro lessons on my YouTube channel. They're short and they're snappy, but they do just give you some really, really useful tips on a range of different skills for writing about literature. Also got the effect on the reader, analysis of technique, language analysis, interpretation, writer's intention and message, context, and a few added extras. These are for sophistication. So the extras are academic phrases, but also linking phrases that show that you're developing and you're transitioning into the next idea, but you're utilising what you've already got as a springboard. So let's have a look. Du Maurier skillfully increases the tension within this extract as a truth about Rebecca is revealed. So you already know that that's my first point. It does show that I've got a good understanding of what's happening, but also now this is what I'm proving. So I'm proving that the tension is being increased, and I'm also linking it to the truth about Rebecca. Immediately after revealing that he hated Rebecca, Maxim uses a triplet to support his revelation, as he describes how she was vicious, damnable, rotten through and through. Now look at how I've embedded the evidence there. I've got two different parts here. Some of it I will analyse, some of it is just there to push my ideas forward, to push my essay forward, but they're all introduced and embedded. And I've also included, I know it's a triplet, so if I know what it is, I'm going to say it. I want to get marks for showing that I can identify techniques and methods. The intensity of his hatred is emphasised through the language he chooses. Now, this is my interpretation. So my interpretation of this is that his language does show just how intense his hatred is. And he chooses the language that he chooses and increases the drama of the moment. So again, gone back to that question. In addition, the use of the word vicious. So now I'm kind of zooming in now, and I've got my language analysis. And I did mention in lesson 1 that you want to try and layer that analysis. So not only do you want to try and talk about a technique, but you also want to try and talk about language as well, to make sure that you're doing both of those. You're getting as many marks as you can for analysis. The use of the word vicious has connotations of deliberate cruelty and violence, which is incredibly shocking for the reader, particularly as this subverts the gender stereotype at the time. So again, I've gone to the context. Now, we don't want to bolt on context. We don't just want to add in contextual details just to show that we know it. Whenever you're using context, it should be to support or develop a point that you've already made. To further exemplify her duplicitous nature, so I've now got a linking phrase. I'm transitioning into my next point. So rather than it seeming like I've just got random points that I'm trying to kind of shoehorn together, I want a nice, easy transition that links. Rebecca is described as cunning and clever. Again, got my embedded evidence. This adjective is then repeated and intensified through the use of the adverb damnably. So now I've got my focus on language, but if I've mentioned that it's repeated, then I've also got a reference to a technique here, which echoes. So again, I'm naming a technique. It echoes the earlier description of Rebecca as damnable. Now look at how I'm using my evidence. Look at how I'm using my quotations. So I've got this quotation up here already, but I've found a clear link between some of the language that's used. So I want to make it clear that I understand how this idea is being developed through the language as the extract progresses. The use of this adverb, so again, I'm going now to my language, once again, not only hints at the idea that her cleverness is something to be vilified rather than revered, but also emphasises her unpleasantness. So not only have I got a lovely linking phrase again, but I'm developing my own interpretation of what I think that means. Maxim then contrasts this image, so I've got this technique, there is a contrast here, and describes how Rebecca was able to adopt traditional feminine traits, so I've got my reference to context, and be the kindest, most generous, most gifted person in the world in order to ensure people adored her. So again, look at how I've got my evidence in there, but I've only taken the bits that I need. So this is from a separate part. I don't need to have so much in there. So again, if you're struggling with how to include just the parts of the quotation that you need or just the evidence that you require, and you want to avoid overly long quotations, I do make reference to that again in my micro lessons. So just pop over there and watch my micro lessons on how to utilise quotations effectively. This list of superlatives, so again I've gone back to naming the technique, is employed by Du Maurier in order to reinforce Maxim's wifely ideal. So I've analysed this technique as well. I'm saying what it does here, as well as the source of his conflict. Now, if you remember when I did all of my notes on the extract before I even started to plan, I had some of these keywords in there, this idea of his conflict. But this is now also my interpretation of what I think is happening, what I think I'm seeing in this extract. The source of his conflict, her refusal to wholly embody such characteristics. It could be argued, so we've got a lovely tentative academic phrase here, that the use of superlatives, so I've gone back to the technique because I now want to say what the effect is, hints at the impossible ideals placed upon women. And we've got context here again that Rebecca either couldn't or wouldn't adhere to. However, the use of superlatives may also, so I've got a lovely linking phrase, I'm carrying on this idea. Look how many times I've gone back to this idea of superlatives. So I'm really developing and layering the analysis of this technique. It may also, quite tentative, suggest that Rebecca was indeed clever and extremely calculating as she strove to adopt the role of perfect wife as part of her duplicitous nature. Okay, so my final tips. Do make sure that your points are clear. They should include a driving point of yours. It should be part of your argument. What's the point that you're trying to make? Try and go in chronological order if possible. If you're grouping your quotations and you're taking them for various different points of the extract, then just make sure that the way in which you're progressing through your essay just makes sense. Choose relevant and interesting quotations. Remember to have a range that you can definitely comment on. If you're at a point where you're looking at it and you think I've got nothing to say, the only thing that I can do is a basic surface explanation, then try and choose a different one. Make sure that you're using the keyword in the question or you're using synonyms. Name and analyse techniques. If you know what it is and if you can see it in there, name it and then analyse it. Why has it been used? What is the effect? What do you learn? Why this particular technique? Also layer. Analyse your language choice. So on top of analysing a technique, can you say in addition the use of the word, and then do a little bit of analysis, talk about the connotations. Layer whenever you can. Link back to Du Maurier's message and intention, so always think about what she wants you to think or feel or understand. Link to the effect on the reader. Use context, but only if it supports and enhances your ideas. Remember, we're not bolting on context just for the sake of it. And use academic phrases throughout to help you develop that response. And again, don't forget to check out the micro lessons. There's a wealth of information in there with regards to how to write an effective literature essay, which I'm sure will be very, very useful to you. So thank you very much for taking part in this lesson. I really hope it's been helpful, and I hope you have a lot of good tips now for how to approach, plan and write up a literature essay. Thank you very much. Goodbye.